MashaAllah, again, I say Salam Alaikum, and it's lovely to see all of you this morning. I'm so grateful to Allah that we have this sanctuary of safety, this place of refuge to go and to find like-minded spirits, to find people that want to grow in their faith, alhamdulillah, and they want to help create a safe place for those who want to do so. So I welcome you today, and I remind you still, let me thank you first, those of you who support this cause, who give money to this organization. Yesterday, we did the Faith Club in Claremont, and I just want to thank Bernard and Claudette, Maysoon and Janan and Wassel. They were there to support our efforts, mashallah. And I was the narrator, Naran is one of the actresses in the Reader Theater. We got great response, good feedback, and inshallah, as a result of that, I think we've probably got another opportunity to speak as well. So I just want to say thank you for your support, and a special thanks to those who came out and supported us yesterday. I didn't get to speak to you guys very much. I'm always trying to sit with people I don't know and look for opportunities to do da'wah and to teach people. But it was a beautiful event nonetheless. And at the end of the class, if anyone who attended, I would like to comment. I'd love to hear your feedback on it, what you think about it. Just a reminder that the potluck will be at 5 o'clock on the 28th, which is next Saturday evening. At our house, and please RSVP and let the organizers know what special dish you will be bringing. It always helps to have a balance of proteins and vegetables. It is a dinner, a potluck dinner, not a dessert tasting contest. Just kidding, but just saying. So I want to encourage you to get on board with the potluck. Remember that the scholars said that if you do not sit at the foot of a teacher within 3 days, or study your faith within 3 days, that your heart begins to die spiritually. So I encourage you, particularly at this time, as today will be the first night of the sacred month of Rajab, and that's why I covered that last week. So you know that we really want to prepare our hearts and ask Allah to illuminate our hearts, ask Allah to fill our hearts with the desire to make this month honor. It's the month of Allah, to make this month and what we do in it honor Allah. And we'll speak to that inshallah today. And in speaking with that, as you know, I will also mention in terms of appointments that either the 18th or the 25th of February we'll have the potluck, and I.S.L.A.M has asked to host that. So she's in Orlando, the greater Orlando area, and we will need one more host, at least for the iftars in the month of Ramadan, and we're going to talk about some of those dynamics today, because we are only 60 days away from Ramadan now. And so we really need to prepare ourselves for this beautiful month of Ramadan. I was looking at the schedule, alhamdulillah, and if you can eat in 30 minutes and you like to do it that way, you're going to be getting up around 5:50 in the morning. The first day is a 13-hour and 15-minute fast. The fast will break at 7:36, and at the end of the fast, or at the end of Ramadan, it'll be 7:54. So as you know, it's about a minute later every day, plus minus. And so begin to think about how many iftars I'm going to attend. Am I going to be an iftar hopper and just spend my time running all over town, talking and just breaking the fast with people and getting into my nafs and not worshiping? So really begin. 60 days goes by in no time, as you know. So really begin to think about Am I going to buy some food online? Am I going to buy some things from the halal market that we can have as appetizers for breaking our fast? Are we going to get our dates? So really begin to prepare, get your outfits for Eid, get all of that done now. And so that you're not busy with that during this beautiful month of Ramadan. I just wanted to remind everybody about what it's going to look like and hope that that does begin to prepare our hearts and minds for this beautiful guest that will be coming in March, and inshallah for the guest that comes tonight, which is the month of Allah, the month of Rajab. So without further ado, and alhamdulillah, nahmaduhu wa nasta'inuhu wa nastaghfiruh, wa na'udhu billahi min shururi anfusina, wa min sayyiati a'malina. Man yahdihillahu fala mudilla lahu, wa man yudlil fala hadiya lahu. Wa ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wahdahu la sharika lahu, wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan abduhu rasuluh. All praise be to Allah. We seek Allah's help and forgiveness. We seek refuge with Allah from the evil in our souls and from our bad deeds. Whomsoever Allah Azza wa Jal guides will never be led astray, and whomsoever Allah leads astray, no one can guide. I bear witness that there is no God, there is no deity but Allah, the one, having no partners, and I bear witness that Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's final slave and messenger. Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu taqullaha haqqa tuqatihi wa la tamutunna illa wa antum muslimun. O you who have believed, fear Allah as Allah alone should be feared, and die not except as Muslims in submission to Allah. Ya ayyuhan nasu taqu rabbakum alladhi khalaqakum min nafsin wahidah wa khalaqa minha zawjaha wa batha minhuma rijalan kathiran wa nisaa. واتقوا الله الذي تساءلون به والأرحم إن الله كان عليكم رقيبا. O people, be dutiful to your Lord who created you from one soul and created from it its mate, and dispersed from both of them many men and women. And fear Allah through whom you demand mutual rights and revere the wombs that bore you. Indeed, Allah is ever over you, Ar-Raqib, an observer. Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu taqullaha wa qulu qawlan sadida yuslih lakum a'malakum wa yaghfir lakum dhunubakum wa may yuti'illaha wa rasuluhu faqad faza fawzan 'azima. O you who have believed, fear Allah and speak words of appropriate justice. Allah will then amend for you your deeds and forgive you your sins, and whoever obeys Allah and Allah's messenger has certainly attained the greatest attainment. So today, inshallah, we will begin our boot camp. And I hope that's a friendly word. I hope it's a word that comforts your heart. We will begin our boot camp for preparing for the month of Ramadan, for I.S.L.A.M. And so when we begin to prepare for our worship of Allah, when we begin to fulfill one of Allah's commands, we have to stop and pause and ask ourselves the question, what is Allah's ultimate purpose for me? What is Allah's ultimate purpose for us? And then we look to Surah 51, verse 56, where Allah Azza wa Jal says what is translated to mean, I have created jinns and mankind for the one ultimate purpose, that they fulfill ibadah to me. And this is the unequivocal purpose of every single one of you. It is the unequivocal purpose of human beings on this earth. Philosophers, scientists, and atheists throughout their lives have spent a millennia trying to answer the question, why are we here? Allah Azza wa Jal saved humanity from hundreds of thousands of years of investigative research and answered these questions for us in one single verse in the Quran. You and I are here to fulfill worship to Allah. How will we fulfill that worship in the month of Allah, the month of Rajab that arrives today? And how will we fulfill that worship to Allah in the month of Sha'ban? And how will we fulfill that worship to Allah in the month of Ramadan? And if you do not plan, if you will fail at it, because you get out of something what you put into it. The most important reflection as we approach and practice the blessed month of Ramadan is the question of what is ibudiyah? What is worshiping? So the ibad or the worshipers, ibudiyah is what is worshiping. And ibudiyah is when I live in this universe and my objectives and my intentions, my goals, my aims, my plans are in accordance with the intent of my creator, of my Lord, of my owner, the one for whom I was born to be a slave. And when the intent of the created is subservient to the intent of the creator, that's when we attain worship. Any secular thing that is halal can be made a spiritual thing simply by saying, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. I am doing this in the name of Allah, the merciful and the compassionate, or simply I'm making an intention to do this fi sabilillah, for the sake of Allah. Every single aspect of our life, every second of our life, every minute of our life, every hour of our life, every day of our life, every night of our life, every month of our life, and every year of our life is to be designed by us so that the intentions behind our actions, deeds, and words, and most importantly, our heart, are in accordance with the intentions of the creator of the heart, soul, mind, and body. And I ask Allah to infuse us with light. I ask Allah to open our hearts, to prepare our hearts and minds for this, and to cause us to allow ourselves to be vulnerable to receive this information. The consequences of my intentional worship with every single moment of life is that I or you as a human being will absolutely attain peace inside us, and we will actualize, materialize, and realize peace outside of me. So if you notice when you're not actually manifesting peace in the world that you're living, you're actually not experiencing peace on the inside. You're actually not worshiping. You are following that whisperer that caused you to go down the wrong path, or me. To whatever degree that we or I or you submit, surrender, consent to the intent of our Creator, we will be able to actualize that level of peace and practice outside of ourselves to the same degree or greater. Allah Azza wa Jal in the Quran is described as I.S.L.A.M, as the peace. And the Messenger of Allah Azza wa Jal, Messenger of Allah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, described Allah Azza wa Jal as the source of peace. And since Allah Azza wa Jal is the source of peace, as-salam, and the only source of peace, Allah Azza wa Jal invites us to the home or the house of peace, Dar al-Salam. And by the way, this term Dar al-Salam is not found in the Quran or the Sunnah, but it's Arabic. If I want to be at peace inside of me and have the consequences of that peace outside of me, where do I go? Where do I get it? So I can give it, because I cannot give what I do not have. And so I should go to the source of all peace, I.S.L.A.M, Allah Azza wa Jal. And when I go to Allah, not only must I eat of Allah's banquet table, I must produce from the fuel that I get from that. I must materialize what I ate. I must materialize what I read, what I digested, what I put in the intellect of my heart. And you hear me tell these stories year after year after year, but I think it's essential that we get our pumps primed to put out the best spring in the month of Ramadan. If I'm in the desert and I need water, and I know where a well is, a source of water, if I want to quench my thirst, I will have to go to that source. I can't get it somewhere else. If I stay away from the source of water in the desert, I will dehydrate and die. If I stay away from the source of water, the spiritual water, the nutrients, the nurturing from Allah's kalam, Allah's speech, I will never be able to quench my thirst, and I will never be able to give water to someone else from that source of water. So if we go around saying that Islam is a religion of peace, which it is, but they do not see it in us, will they think that we have Islam? And that's something to just ponder and reflect about. The nearer I am to the source of peace, just as the nearer I am to the source of water, the greater the chance of quenching my thirst, and the greater the possibility that you and I can give water to others. If I stay away from the source of peace, I will not drink from the source of peace, I will not have peace, and I will not be able to give peace to others. So we ask ourselves, how much peace do we get a day? Do I go to the prayer and I experience peace for, let's say, 50 minutes a day if I devote 10 minutes to 5 prayers? And do you know that that 50 minutes is not even 4% of your day? If you want to give Allah 4% of your day, you got to give Allah 60 minutes. The nearer I am to the source of peace, the more often I visit the source of peace, the more peace I will have. And this is why, my beloved brothers and sisters, it is so important to make dhikr, to express gratitude to Allah, to keep Allah in your foremost thoughts, in your heart. This kind of being near to Allah, the source of peace, is not a physical nearness, unlike the analogy of the well. It is a nearness with my qalb, with my heart. And of course, I don't mean that physical piece of flesh called the heart. I mean those inner characteristics and qualities, attributes that are connected to my physical heart, because I have studied the attributes of Allah. I have studied the adabs and the character of our beloved Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Nearness to Allah is achieved by that innermost feeding immersion and connectedness with Allah, with our spiritual heart. Tonight, make sure that you go into this night, this first night, because night comes before day in Islam, in the lunar calendar, that this night you think of a good deed that you will do to honor Allah in the month of Allah. And then the first day of Rajab tomorrow, what will I do to honor the month of Allah? And this, my beloved brothers and sisters, is something that one has to experience. They have to plan and follow through. Otherwise, you will never have a gnosis of this. You will never really understand this. So it is really nothing that someone can describe to you. They can tell you how to do it, but you'll only know the sweetness and the joy of it when you actually implement it and you experience it. Often you hear me using words like jism, body, ruh, soul, naf, self, all the heart, akal, brain, intellect, sha'wa, lust. Akal is sorry for the intellect. Sha'wa is lust, desires, passions, and pleasures. And hawa, which is inclinations, and caprice, it's the desires. Sometimes we talk about the hawa, and that's not to be mistaken with Hawa, Eve, it's hawa. Inclinations and caprice are sudden, uncountable changes in mood or behavior from a lack of mindfulness. Our inclinations get thrown off. We call it being off-centered. We call it not being mindful. So Ramadan is about the spiritual or soul feeding, not the physical feeding. So I lovingly implore, beseech you to follow the Sunnah. Don't spend your days from dawn until sunset in the kitchen cooking, missing prayers, but spend your days worshiping Allah, reading the Quran, praising Allah, and making sure that wherever you go, honoring that month, you keep your conversations about Allah Azza wa Jal and the Messenger Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. This physical body that we have is simply the vehicle that Allah Azza wa Jal has provided us with for the soul in this al-hayat al-dunya, this worldly realm or life of this world. And this is important, my brothers and sisters, because souls, as you know, were created before humans, and our soul existed before our body. So why does it get the attention first? And the soul exists after our body. So which one needs more attention? The soul has certain traits before it came into the body. Do we know what they are? Once it was joined to the body and goes through this experience of life, it gains other traits and continues onward until certain things will happen with the ruh, that immortal cognition. Will that ruh come back and straighten out all of those worldly experiences misunderstood? As we continue through this journey and return to Allah? What do we intend to get out of this journey that never ends? It's eternal. What provisions are we aiming to have at the transition back to the soul world? And that means that I will spend most of my time on this earth focusing on my soul, that eternal part of me, trying to make sure that I take it back to that perfect state it was given to me in. We are a soul with a body, not a body with a soul. We are souls. When we think about another person or we identify a person, we think about their unique facial expressions and bodily features. But these things will not be present when we move on to the next life. So what do we know of the soul? It continues, it remains, it is eternal. The body that we live in, that carries out that determines how the soul will fare is the vessel or vehicle for you or your soul. But you are not this body. That is not the part of you that's important to Allah. In this Islamic paradigm, it is the soul that actually defines you. It defines who the real you is, the original fitra you. That soul which had certain attributes before it came into this world and will acquire certain things in this world and continue to acquire things after this world. For whatever I have taught, if someone that learned it from me teaches it, my soul will reap the benefits, not my physical body. Ibn Taymiyyah, rahimahullah, mentions in explaining jasad, body, and ruh, that rational soul, that immortal cognition, that fitra, some basics. And this is what Ibn Taymiyyah, rahimahullah, said. Just as the body can be sustained or find happiness through things that are of this world, the soul, which is not of this world, can only find happiness, satisfaction, and comfort through the things that are of its nature. This physical body is of a worldly nature. But this spiritual soul is of a spiritual nature. And it will not find peace until we feed it from Allah's table. Since the originator of the soul is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the soul only finds satisfaction when it connects to Allah, whereas the body finds satisfaction in the things other than that, the things that were created, and it connects to matters of this world. As these two join together, Ibn Qayyim, rahimahullah, mentions something very profound. When it comes to these two things that you are made of, the body and the soul, in order to find pleasure with one, you typically must exhaust the other. What a profound statement. What a profound statement. When it comes to worldly things, and it comes to things that enhance your pleasure in the world, they typically come at the expense of the soul if it is haram, the prohibited thing. In order to pray, for example, Qiyamul Layl, Salatul Layl, Salatul Tahajjud, one has to sacrifice the physical body's need and desire for sleep. So we desire sleep. But if our soul desires to worship, the physical body will have to suffer a little bit. If you sacrifice food, drink, and desire to fast, if you are going to sacrifice time for the soul and enhancing the soul, it could come at the expense of tiring the body. It could come at the expense of missing a television program, a basketball game, a football game, or whatever you choose to substitute as your purpose in life. We have a limited bandwidth, energy, or mental capacity within the body and the soul to deal with our journey, and the way that we treat each of them is going to affect the other. So it is by necessity, they cannot be separated in this world entirely. And this is the jihad. This is the greater jihad. This war that we have going on between this physical desire and taking care of our soul. Allah Azza wa Jal mentions in the Holy Quran that when we go to sleep at night, our soul travels at night and leaves the body. And it comes back whenever we awake. So there's a soul journey. It's the soul is moving in and out of this body, this vehicle. It's getting out of the car, into the car. In Surah Al-Zumar, Surah 39 and verse 42. It is Allah who takes away the souls at the time of their death and those that die not during their sleep. He keeps those souls for which he has ordained death and sends the rest for a term appointed. What will we do with our appointed term? Verily, in this are signs for a people who think deeply. This beautiful journey is so enhanced the deeper that we think. In Surah Al-An'am, verse 60, it is Allah, it is He who takes your souls by night when you are asleep and has knowledge of all that you have done by day. In verse 42 of Surah Al-Zumar, it is Allah who takes away the souls at the time of their death and those that die not during their sleep. He keeps those souls for which he has ordained death and sends the rest for that term appointed. Sorry, I repeated that. It was narrated by Abu Juhayfa, may Allah be pleased with him. The Messenger of Allah, peace and blessings be upon him, was on a journey during which they slept until the sun rose. He said, verily you were dead, and Allah returned your souls to you. Whoever sleeps and misses a prayer, let him or her offer it when he wakes up. And whoever forgets a prayer, let him or her offer it when he or she remembers. Sometimes our souls have a bad dream whereby our physical body got hurt during it. And we wake up feeling that pain in our body, surreal. It's as if we were really there. We have dreams that we fly off a building and we would swear that we know how to fly. We feel it inside our being. But nothing happens to the body, but we feel that. The body and soul is linked in this world, and we need to keep that in mind. It is interesting because if you think that the soul goes to Allah and the physical body is left in the bed and we have dreams, some of the fathers of the study of the soul and mothers say that when we are dreaming, it is our subconscious, this is what they say, warring with our conscious. We can't work it out in the world. So we're trying to work it out in our sleep. Everything in this world that gives us happiness offers us an equal share of sadness. And we don't like to look at that. We don't like to think about that. We don't like to admit that. Kids give us happiness, but they also give us sadness. Wealth can give us happiness. It can also bring sadness. For every single thing, there's a polarity. When the soul connects, whatever the soul connects to when it comes to Allah, does not have any share of sadness. It only has happiness. The soul, when it connects to its creator, and it connects to that which it relates to, it has joy. It becomes tearful when it realizes that it is connected with its creator. It is being fed by the creator, by its not only its creator, but by the messenger's message. Some of those terms mentioned before need to be understood to understand personality and its components. We must understand the difference between the nafs and the ruh, the self and the soul. That ruh, that rational soul, that immortal cognition, is one of the mysterious things of Allah. I just realized that might be causing a distraction for you as it was causing one for me. It has very mysterious qualities, and it is very hard for us to grasp these terms. We debate about when it comes into the womb, the ruh, and we debate about when it leaves the world. When we look at jurisprudence, we ask questions like, at what point is a person dead, or are they dead if their brain is not functioning? These are scholarly questions. Has the soul left the body if the physical heart is still beating, but the brain is dead? When the heart beats in the womb, according to the majority of scholars, the heart is there before the soul comes, because the heart appears in the fetus, I believe, at 17 days in gestation. So Allah Azza wa Jal built us from the heart out. There's a message in that. There's an interdimensional message in that. We ask questions like, when does the angel breathe the soul, and when does the angel take the soul out? The ruh, that rational soul, that immortal cognition, is a very mysterious creation of Allah in the way that it travels and in the way that it fits into these various realms. The body and the soul that meets together for this temporary amount of time, many of the scholars mention, is the nafs, the self. Typically, when we hear about the self in the Quran, it is when the ruh and the jasad, the soul and the body, come together. We have to understand by context. We have to dig for the meaning of these things. We have this mixture of the faculties that Allah Azza wa Jal gave us that are specific to this world, that have been combined with the soul. Once the ruh moves on from this world, it still retains its original quality as the ruh, and it moves on, and the ruh continues, but the nafs remain here. Think about when we sleep at night. The word sha'wa, lust, desire, passion and pleasure, and hawa, inclinations and caprice, or sudden unaccountable changes in mood or behavior from a lack of mindfulness, both get translated as desire. There is a difference between the two, and we need to know that, particularly in approaching this month of spiritual focus, this month of Allah. And typically when Allah speaks of sha'wa in the Quran, or the Prophet ﷺ talks about the word, it is speaking about the bodily desires, sexual, material, and emotional, physical desires related to lust and greed. I want power. That's an emotional desire. I want houses and land and cars and boats and RVs. The word hawa, which also means desire, typically refers to wishful thinking. I am inclined to have this. I am inclined to have that. When Allah, for example, refers to in Surah 25, Surah Al-Furqan, verse 43, have you seen the one who takes his or her ego or desires as his Lord? This is Hawa. Ibn Abbas mentions that people would literally switch out idols based upon how they liked the way the idols looked or what powers were supposedly bestowed upon those idols, switching them out as they saw fit. I think this sounds very familiar in the world today. We sometimes try to get rid of one idol, and while we do that, we pick up another one as a substitute idol. This is deviant thinking. It's a deviant direction of thought from the ruh, which is fed by the thought, the kalam, the speech, the thoughts that are presented by Allah and His Messenger. The connection is that the desires, the sha'wa, is what guides the hawa. That's what we want, is that the hawa is guided by spiritual desires, not by the physical desires, that it is guided by the ruh, the heart, not my five senses, not what I want, not my ego. A person drives their thinking by their lust and their greed, and that becomes directional thinking. Allah mentions that it is important to make our thinking conform with that which Allah describes as rightful guidance. Those who are guided by Allah, no one will misguide them. Those who are not guided by Allah, there is no guide for them. The Prophet ﷺ said, no one of you truly believes until your desires, hawa, is in accordance with that which I have brought. If this is the way we think, we will start to desire rightful guidance as opposed to being driven by lowly base goals and the things of this world. The hawa, desires, start to conform with the sunnah, and as a natural result of that, your bodily desires and things of this world start to conform as well. One affects the other because you are convinced about this and you are desiring to follow Allah and follow rightful guidance from the Messenger. And this is why it is so important to have yaqeen, to have certitude, to have conviction, for your shahada to move from a shahada to a kalima, to have an experience with this. As a result of your actions, lust starts to become channeled properly, curbed, and your desires in the bodily sense start to be curbed. Everything starts to fall in line with them. The opposite way is when the lust and the greed are what drives our way of thinking, drives what course we take, and we end up messing, it ends up messing us up altogether. And the greatest example of that we find in the Quran is those who rebelled from Bani Israel. When Allah talked about the people of Musa, I.S.L.A.M, Allah talked about nifaq ahmadi, which is hypocrisy in action. That they started to be driven by their desires, and then that nifaq amity that's mentioned, hypocrisy in action, drove them to what is referred to in the Quran is nifaq intikar, hypocrisy in creed. So when you begin to have hypocrisy in what you're doing, when you are being unfaithful to Allah, an infidel in that sort of context, unfaithful to Allah, your hypocrisy becomes part of your creed. It's a delusion. Nifaq Ahmadi is when your actions don't match. They don't match what the Ruh was intended to produce. You will portray religiosity in public. Oh, maybe the finest jalabiya that you can find. Maybe the finest kufi you can find. The finest jalabiya. But you have times where and when you ditch that religiosity because of your desires. How often is that? Will I strive to change it in the month of Rajab? Will I start tonight? Your desires drive you, and that eventually starts to corrupt your creed and theology as well. We have deluded thinking. And I call this desire dissonance. Well, I thought I desired this, but now my soul desires this, so I have dissonance. Nifaq amadi, hypocrisy in action becomes nifaq intiqada, hypocrisy in creed. The sha'wa, the desires, ends up becoming deviance in your hawa, deviance in your inclination and tendencies. Desires in the worldly sense and the sense of lust and greed start to drive a thought in a way of wishful thinking and deviant thinking, to where that becomes your idol, that thing becomes your God. And the Prophet ﷺ mentions that one that is addicted to alcohol is like the one who worships idols. What are you addicted to? What am I addicted to? What idols do I have in my life? You see, the sin of drinking alcohol is not like the sin of worshiping idols, but a person becomes addicted and starts to change things in order to accommodate that addiction, instead of ditching that addiction and changing themselves in accordance with rightful guidance. So what we know of the definition of addiction in the chemical dependency world and in the world of psychology is that when you begin to change your life to make sure you take care of your addiction, you begin to steal from the people you love. You will do anything to take care of your idol. And this is how tendencies drive sha'wa, desire. They are both in the realm of desire. But at the same time, and in terms of Quranic terminology and in the Sunnah, we see sha'wa referring to bodily lust and hawa referring to desirable or deviant thinking in accordance with those desires. So what does this mean for us in terms of some of our components? This is only one element of our components. The idea is to retain ruh as it comes into the body, as the vehicle pairs with the ruh and it becomes nafs, it becomes self. The idea is to retain its original connection with Allah throughout the process. Basically, we are trying not to let the nafs, the ego and desires corrupt the ruh, that rational soul, that immortal cognition, that fitra of Allah. As it comes into the world, do not let the ruh, the rational soul, the immortal cognition, which took that testimony with Allah in the very beginning, become diverted or deviated. Let it continue its journey to Allah on the Siratul Mustaqim, on the straight path, not on the path of ego, not on the path of our desires. It has merely to switch vehicles. Am I traveling in my soul to Allah at night and back in the daytime? Or am I just going to travel with my physical body? As you have become you in the worldly sense, you remain directed towards the hereafter. You still desire Allah. You still desire the goodness of the day of judgment, and you remain in that direction. Likewise, when it comes to your sha'wa, your desires and hawa, inclinations, you can't negate your thinking. Allah gave the shaitan permission until the day of judgment to whisper thoughts into your head. So that's why we need to know that the way you think and act is going to become your gnosis. It's going to become your experience. It's going to become what you know. And that's why we must think the way Allah would have us think, and think the way that the Prophet would have us think, and know that knowledge so that we won't be thinking in a destructive way for our soul. If our hawa, inclinations and tendencies is in accordance with what the Prophet brought, our thoughts will be pure and guide us to rightful guidance. And we're going to examine this, inshallah, next week. We're going to go deeper into this. So if your sha'wa, worldly desires, get the best of us occasionally, if we are centered, if we have certitude, if we are absolutely mindful of Allah, that once or twice that we get caught up in our thinking will not corrupt us. But if the majority of our thinking and focus is about this world and what I can get out of it, that's the majority of what we're going to get back. But if every now and then we get caught up, because we are mortals, we are humans, our thinking is still clear. You have clarity of thought. As a result of clarity in thought, you chart your traits and actions to try to match the clarity of thought and move in that direction toward Allah. One of the beautiful things about Islam is the alacrity of mind and heart. It is crystal clear what to do and what not to do, much more so than religions that I've practiced previously. When the jasad, when the body and the ruh, the rational soul or immortal cognition, the fitra are in harmony, the sha'wa, the desires and the hawa, tendencies are in harmony. And all of it is within rightful guidance. This is one form in terms of the components of a person. May Allah Azza wa Jal always keep us directed towards Him, no matter what properties we take on as we come into this world or as we leave this world. May Allah Azza wa Jal keep our hearts, thoughts, and actions always directed toward Allah. It is this experience that stimulates the deepest part of your soul and causes tears to flood when you think of the source of peace. Subhanaka Allahumma wa bihamdika ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. Transcendent are you, O Allah, and praise be to you as you praise yourself. I bear witness that there is no deity save you. I seek your refuge. I seek your forgiveness, and I repent to you.